And this episode it meant a lot to me. I tell you what, there was a lot of similarities, I would say, in my own life, which I'm going to get into. Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very blessed on this end. And as always, I give God all the praise, honor, and glory for that. We're continuing with Tulsa King. Why? People are loving it. The comments are great. And I got to tell you, I'm really getting into this series. You know, Sly, it's tough because Sly is Sly. Sly is Rocky. Sly is Rambo. But he's really settling into this character. And right now, he's Dwight Manfredi to me. He really is. He's doing a great job. And this episode it meant a lot to me. I tell you what, there was a lot of similarities, I would say, in my own life, which I'm going to get into. And then obviously episode 6 is coming up. We'll be doing that also. But this episode had so much. I mean, it had some violence and some, a lot of confrontation. There was a lot of personal stuff with his family, things that I related to. I'm going to get into that. Again, we don't go scene by scene and relate everything. I'm telling you, the series is good, and it's getting even better. You know, Sly's doing a great job. Dominic Lombardozzi doing a great job. They all are. And Terrence Winter, who's the writer, is a brilliant writer. Sopranos and so many things that he's done. So the series is really heating up, and it's doing good. And if you haven't seen it, go on Paramount Plus, start from the beginning and watch it. You're going to enjoy it. Trust me. Now, I know I've talked about authenticity. Is it totally authentic? No, but there isn't anything that's totally authentic unless it's a documentary. But many things are ringing true. So we're going to get into it now. We're going to talk about it. By the way, I was with Sammy Gravano earlier in the week, and he tasted the wine. He really enjoyed it. People, it's Christmas. I don't believe in holding grudges against people. Sammy and I, we are friends. We do get along. You know that I interviewed Karen Gravano. I thought it was a great interview. I thought she was terrific. You know, his son Gerard, love the kid. He's not a kid, but, a lot younger than me, so I say that. You know, he's got a great family, and you know what? Sammy is doing well. I mean, and we become friends. Look, we had a blood bond way back when, and we're trying to carry it through in the right way, what Cosa Nostra was really all about back then. Obviously, we have a different frame of mind right now. Yes, I am a Christian, so some of the things I did back then I'm not going to do now, but Sammy and I are friends, and I'm happy to say that. So anyway, let's get into the episode. Again, this had everything. I love the way it starts off. Sly is starting to get a little bit Tulsified, I would say. You know, he's got sharkskin shoes. He's got the belt that you would wear out in Oklahoma, probably not in New York. But he gets a call from his sister. His brother passed away. And, tough situation. He has to go back for the funeral. He's been away 25 years. He hasn't seen his family. I get it. I only did 8 years. I was away from my family for that period of time. My father did, 40 years. He was in and out during that time, but 10-year stretches he wasn't home. You lose a lot. You miss so much. So now he's got to go back to the funeral. He's with his family. He's visiting them back then. He sees his sister, has a real deep conversation with his sister. And one thing that really got me, was he going to the funeral? And, there was a lot of talk about me and my dad when my dad passed away, about me not going to the funeral. You know what? In this episode, Sly says he wants to say some words at the funeral for his brother that he hadn't seen in, 20 some odd years. And his sister says, I don't think that's a good idea. I would rather you not. And he doesn't. Why? Because I think she believed he would be a distraction. He's gone all of this time. He's a controversial figure. The family isn't really welcoming him with open arms. It's a distraction. When my dad passed away, believe me, it hurt, 2 years ago. I didn't go to the funeral service. I didn't go. I visited my dad privately because that's what it's all about. Why didn't I go? It was a family decision. I didn't want to be a distraction. There's talk about me going back to Brooklyn where I hadn't been before, seeing people that I hadn't seen in years. I didn't want to be a distraction. And that was a family decision that we made. A lot of people have, input into that. They don't really know what they're talking about. These are personal family things that we don't advertise. We don't get on, YouTube and talk about it, the circumstances of why we chose to do certain things. Did I visit my dad afterwards? Yeah, pay my respects, of course, privately. I don't have to put on a show for anybody. I don't have to become a distraction to anything. This was my dad's time. People were mourning him, and he deserved that. So, I understand Sly's sister's decision here, even though Sly wanted to be there. I get it. And he respected that. He understood. So it goes on, and then he gets a call from Chicky, Dominic Lombardozzi. Pete, the boss, his father is in the hospital. And he says, how come you haven't seen my father? And he says, well, I'm going to the funeral tomorrow of my brother. And then, Chicky says, well, don't forget, my father was like a brother to you, and you should be visiting him in the hospital. Is that really true? No. I mean, nobody's going to stop you from going to your brother's funeral. These are the things sometimes that, people get the wrong impression, that we were, just so hardcore when it comes to things like that. No. I don't see that's happening. People want to respect their family members, especially respecting them when they passed away, the funeral, the whole thing. I don't think that would have occurred at all. There's another scene there, when Sly finally meets his daughter, Tina, who obviously I relate to, my oldest daughter. Her name is Tina, like my mother and like my sister, a popular name among us. And they're at a family, dinner that Sly paid for. By the way, he paid for the funeral also. And, he's trying to just bring things together. He's telling everybody, let's put the past behind us. And you could see this tension at the table. People weren't really buying into it, especially his daughter, Tina. It was kind of a rough scene because, look, after 25 years, he's trying to get his relationships back. It's difficult. The guy did 25 years, very, very difficult. And by the way, comments about my dad living in a nursing home. Yeah, he did. You know why? He was living with my sister when he came home, but she couldn't care for him. My sister worked. She was in Brooklyn. He needed constant care. My dad was in a wheelchair, and he had some health issues that people at 100 have. I don't have to get into it. You can imagine. He needed constant care. So they put him in a home that was convenient in Queens. He was able to see everybody. I visited him several times there. It was much easier. He had constant care, which is what he needed. They treated him wonderfully there. We all knew him, so it was a good spot for him. I wanted him to come out to California, but he wouldn't come. He didn't want to come out here. He figured back there he had, he was just more comfortable at 100 years old. So, I get it. It was tough to see him there, but again, it was a good environment for him. So it moves on. Now something else is happening out in Oklahoma. Black McAdams, he was the head of the biker group, right? He kidnaps, I think his name is Boley or something like that. The guy that Stallone extorted originally. In the cannabis shop, he kidnaps him because remember in the last episode they had that whole tussle at the festival, and so it's starting to heat up out there because this Black McAdams is now very upset because Sly beat up his guys and got their tanks back. So there's kind of a little bit of a war starting out between the bikers and Stallone's crew out in Tulsa. There was another scene I love. This Black McAdams has connections with the cops. So he's got two dirty cops that go and kidnap Tyrone. They kidnap him. And they're really hassling him. They give him a hard time. They lock him up. When he's getting out of jail, he had $1,200. They take it from him. They don't give him, his stuff back. And so they're really trying to rattle him. And there is a scene there when the two cops, the dirty cops, are bringing this guy, Boley, I think is, or something like that, back to a bar. And the owner of the bar, who is part of Stallone's crew, the cops are trying to rattle him, and he tells them, hey, get the heck out of here. This bar is on Cherokee Indian territory. You have no jurisdiction here. And he stands up to them and throws them out. And they go. It was just a good scene. It was, you're starting to see some power there from guys other than Stallone. But so that's going on out in Tulsa while Stallone is dealing with his family matters, back east. And then something happens. There was a very, very touching scene that really, really got to me. I got to tell you, when he finally, before that, he sees his daughter and his son-in-law that he had never met. He spoke to him once on the telephone, and he just happens to say to his son-in-law, you could have called me or looked me up and asked me for my daughter's hand in marriage before you married her. And Tina right away jumps in, hey, you're the one that left us. We didn't leave you. So you can see that bitterness and that anger there. And, so that doesn't end nicely for them. And then there's another scene that was really heart-wrenching and kind of hit home for me, people, I'll be honest with you. And I don't normally share this kind of stuff on YouTube, but really got to me again, I guess because the daughter's name is Tina, like mine. Sly goes and visits Tina at her flower shop, and they get into a real deep conversation. And Sly is just trying to make up with his daughter, and you know what? She's not really having it. She really isn't. And people, I got to tell you, when I first left, and some of you know, I was married once before, I had 3 children there. And I'll never forget, I was locked up for several months before I took my plea. I didn't get any bail. And after I took the plea and they were transporting me out to the prison to do my time, I only asked for the ability to spend a couple hours with my children, at that time, who were young. They were 8, 7, and 6, I think. We had 3 in 3 years. And so I spent some time with them, and my oldest daughter, Tina, she wasn't really warm, she wasn't the cuddly type or anything like that. We were close with the kids, but it wasn't, I can't explain. You know how you have some that are just not real affectionate? She was not affectionate. Well, when we were getting ready to leave after a couple of hours together, she had a breakdown in my arms, and I was like stunned because I had never seen her like this. And boy, it really impacted me, and then I go away for, almost 5 years. And, people, it's so hard when you leave your children like that. It's really so hard. And that's why I say, it's such a tough life, to be separated from your family, and the kids are the ones that suffer. And, I can go on, but it's not about me. This is about Tulsa King. But, that whole scene really hit home. And I'm like hoping now that, Stallone will get together with his daughter and that they'll patch things up. I want to see that happen. And I've done that with my daughter to a degree. It's not exactly where I want it to be by a long shot, and I blame myself for that. It's just so hard to put things back together after you're away for a long time like that, especially in my case, remarried, and moved, to the other side of the country. But anyway, it keeps going, things moving on. And we see things building up out on, the West Coast, because now what's going to happen? There seems to be a mob war between Sly's crew and the bikers, but we don't know what's going to happen yet. But something's going down there. We know that. So now things really start to get heated up, because as Stallone is talking to his daughter, she kind of slips for a minute and she tells him something that's leading Sly into believing that something went down with one of his former associates. She don't want to tell him. And he said, no, you got to tell me. You started this, you got to tell me. She doesn't want to tell him. Finally, she says, please promise me you're not going to do anything about it. And she's scared. You can see it, right? We don't know if he made the promise or not. She obviously tells him. We don't know what she told him. But we see the next scene, Sly's enraged, totally enraged. So what does he do? He goes to the hospital and he sees Pete, the boss who's in the hospital. And he sits down with him and he starts to talk to him a little bit. And another very touching scene. He starts to tell Pete, he said, Pete, all those years, 25 years I was away. I wasn't a father. I didn't do what fathers are supposed to do. I didn't protect my children. I didn't protect my daughter. I didn't watch her grow up. And now we're realizing that Tina told him something that was not good. It brings me back to my own father, people. And I have to say it. And look, I love my dad. There's no question about it. But I have to say this, and I have to talk about that life. My dad did 40 years in prison. Stand-up guy. You could hit my dad with ice picks. He was never going to cooperate with the government or do anything like that. Why? Because my dad's legacy in that life meant everything to him. He wanted to be a stand-up guy until he died, and he was. But here's the other side of it. Here's what happened. My family fell apart. At the end of my mother's life, after 33 years without a husband, I can only describe her life with my dad as ugly. She hated him, basically, because she blamed him for everything that went wrong. Everything. Now, what went wrong? We had a sister. My sister died of an overdose of drugs at the age 27. My brother, a drug addict. I know I talked about this before. My younger sister was not all there, very emotionally, unsettled. She dies young, never took care of herself. The family was destroyed. And my father made a decision. When he got out of jail after 10 years, he was paroled. And he realized he was still going to be a target. People were watching him. Should he have at that point made a decision, you know what, my family comes first. If I have to move out of here, if I have to disassociate myself with that life, I have every reason to do that. I'm allowed to do that. I'm a stand-up guy, and people understand when I'm on parole, I can't be involved with anybody. And he could have disassociated himself with that life and taken care of his family. And there was time at that point. It was time to do that. Well, he didn't. He chose not to. He chose to stay in that life. And as a result, his family was devastated, destroyed. So people, let me ask you this. And again, I love my father. I understand what he did. I don't agree with it. Obviously, I didn't do that. I left the life because my family came first. But aren't we supposed to put our families first in this life? You know, it's God first, family next. If we don't take care of our family, what good are we, really? Think about it. You know, I've let some of my family members down by going to jail. Okay, my kids from my first marriage, was I 100% with them? No, I wasn't. I'm being honest with you. I tried to make it up afterwards. Not easy. But if you don't take care of your family first, what's more important than that? Oh, you took a blood oath. Okay, yeah. But do you let your family go down the tubes? Do you let all that stuff happen? You know, a lot of people don't know this. My younger brother, who, again, we know, testified against my father. It's public knowledge. He went to visit my father, and my father welcomed him, you know, when he was in that home before he passed away. My brother went. He wanted to go see his dad. He did. You know, a lot of people don't understand the family dynamics and what's going on behind the scenes, and we're not going to talk about it, but my father embraced my brother because he understood. Maybe he felt guilty, you know, because some of the reasons my brother went down the wrong way was because my father wasn't around. No question about that. I believe that with all my heart. So, you know, it was a very touching scene, and Tina tells him something. Now he's in the hospital with Pete, and he's going over all of this, and he's having all these pangs of conscience, which I get. And then we find out Tina told him something. He grabs Pete, the boss. Now this is a soldier grabbing a boss. And he asks him if he knew what happened with his daughter. He said, you promised to take care of my wife and kids, and you didn't do it. And what he didn't tell Pete at that time, remember what Manny had told him, Armand, that Pete had put a hit out on him. Now, he didn't say anything at that point. So this is the stuff, the treachery that's going on, right? And he grabs him by the face as Pete is laying in that bed, and he said, did you know? And it seems like Pete didn't know. He's like, what are you talking about? And I kind of think he didn't know. Sly is enraged. He leaves there. He goes to the social club where all the guys are, and he goes in there and he just explodes. He grabs this guy, Nico, and gives him a beating like you've never seen before. I mean, beats him, grabs him, puts his face on top of a hot iron, you know, and just beats him to a pulp. And then everybody, Chicky, the other guys, you know, the guy whose jaw he broke, they're standing there in awe, they're in shock. And Chicky says, you're going to kill him. He's got the guy lying on the floor, steps on his head, and he does just that. He kills him, killed Nico. So what happened, obviously? He must have tried to molest Tina. Now, let me tell you something. You do that, you're a dead man anyway. And by the way, I want to tell you this. There was another scene in here where Sly was at the hospital again. He was going to go visit Pete. And the guy whose jaw he's broke, I always forget his name. He's a great actor. Whose jaw he was going to break, starts up with him again a little bit. And Chicky says, oh, you got 100,000, it's over with. So Sly must have paid him the 100,000. I was with Sammy. I said, Sammy, I told him a little bit about the scene, you know, where Sly hits the other made guy. I said, what happens? He said, dead. You don't get away with that. Pay 100 grand, forget about it. It's not happening. You know, Sammy and I agree on that. You hit another made guy, you're dead. But anyway, again, not realistic, but good for the story. It's okay, it's great. So anyway, that's the way it ends, with Sly killing that guy and walking out. Now, I haven't seen the other episode yet, but you know, gonna be rough. What's gonna happen? Sly just killed a made guy. Did he have every reason to do it? Yeah, because the guy molested his daughter. At least that's what we think. But what's gonna happen? Is Chicky gonna stand for this? What is Pete gonna say, the boss? What's gonna happen? Stallone now is gonna have a war with the bikers out in Tulsa. He might have a war with his own people there in New York because he hit a mob guy, even though he killed a mob guy, even though he had every right to do it. But do you see how this plot is thickening? And now does he get back with his daughter, Tina? I can't wait for the next episode, I'll be honest with you. I'm really getting into it. But this one kind of pulled at the heartstrings a little bit with me because that daughter had to be named Tina, right? Had to bring back, you know, memories for me. But anyway, People, watch this. Tulsa King is getting really good. By the way, they renewed it for a second season, so people got to be enjoying it. So tune into it. You're going to like it. Stay tuned. Episode 6 coming up. We're going to really enjoy that and get into it. So that's it for today, my friends. How do I always leave you the same way? Be safe. I just sent 2 friends of mine into New York, two lady friends that were friends of the family, my wife, my sister. And I have somebody in New York watching for them because they've never been there before and there's stuff happening on the streets. So ladies, be safe, be healthy. Again, you know, I don't have to repeat it. I know it's Christmas time. We're going to eat a lot, but, you know, just do it right and get some exercise. It's good for you. Be safe, be healthy. God bless every one of you, especially through this season. You know what? Those of you that feel blessed, give thanksgiving to God. And those of you who haven't, just keep praying to God. You know, the blessings will come, guaranteed. Be safe, be healthy. God bless. Yes, I'll see you next time.